Hello everyone, this is the Algerian General, and welcome back to episode 1 of my modding tutorial series, also known as Algerian General's Modding Bootcamp. So today we're finally going to get our hands dirty with some code. We're finally going to start with something simple of course. We're slowly going to get into modding, and we're going to start with events, shall we? So I suppose you guys already know what events are. They're just pop-ups which have some text and multiple options, right? So now what we are going to do is take a look at some vanilla code. Again, I highly advise you check the first episode, or well, episode 0 if you didn't. That one contained a bunch of useful information for you to start getting into your modding career. So highly advise you check it out. I'll be posting a link to that in the description down below, and it's also going to be part of the not a playthrough, it's going to be part of the thing. You'll see what I mean. So we're going to open up this vanilla file here. Okay, let's try to find a simple event here. Okay, this one looks like a simple event. So I'm going to copy this and put it in a new file just to make sure I don't mess anything up here. So as you could see, this is a simple event. Now, first of all, there's multiple types and kinds of events. First, and the most used one, is country events, which are just simple events. Then you have news events, which are events that are, well, first of all, they look different. The image is much bigger, and they're mostly designed to only have one option, as in only one button for you to click. And well, the main purpose is basically to notify people about major events happening around the world. So for instance, the reoccupation of the Rhineland, or perhaps the United States joining the Allies. I don't think that event exists, but you can make it. It's all possible. The third type of events is leader events. This is new stuff that comes with the 1.5 update. These are mainly events that target leaders, and when I say leaders, I mainly mean generals, field marshals, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure about admirals. I haven't seen any events for them, but it's highly possible that you can make some of them. A good example for these leader events would possibly be, for instance, Erwin Rommel fell sick, that kind of events, which, as I've said, they are mainly made, or mainly designed at least, to work and to do stuff and interact with leaders. And the fourth and last type, for now at least, is called state events. Now, state events are mainly country events that only affect states. Well, at least they are designed to interact with states. I don't really think I've seen any of those events. Not in vanilla and not in any major mod, so really, I cannot really give you any examples on it, but it doesn't matter. So what should an event have? First of all, this here defines the event type. You have country event, you can also have, for instance, leader event, you can have news event, depending on the kind of events you want to do. For us, we're going to remain with the standard country event. An event, of course, needs an ID. Special ID, so that means that two events cannot have the same ID. Now, the way you write or code an ID is simple. You first have what we call the namespace, and then a number. So namespace dot number. Now, just so you know, the game needs to know about these namespaces. You need to tell the game, well, there we go, I have this. These are the namespaces I have. For instance, Germany, if we get back here, you're going to see add namespace Germany. So all these events here are going to work properly. Keep in mind, namespaces are case sensitive. So if I do this, they are not gonna work. So let's keep it as it is. So in our scenario, we want to make something new. So I'm gonna call it add namespace. Maybe YouTube test, right? This is the namespace we're going to use for at least this tutorial. and we're going to give it a number. I guess we could give it whatever number we want, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to use number 1. So after the ID, these things here are mostly localization keys. You first have a title and a description. So let me just give you an example of how that actually looks. So if you go to localization and you go to, for instance, where is it? Yes, events. You're going to see an example here. So this is the key, just like this one, and this is the text it will actually show. If it doesn't have any text here in the localization, or if you haven't even added it to any localization files, it's going to show up as Gemini.4.t. So whenever you make events, focuses, or whatever, you're going to have to add localization keys, just like you see here, right? So same of course goes for the description. Just so you know, it doesn't have to be T. I could just call it title, but I have to do the same here, call it title as well. It would work like a charm. We're not gonna save the file yet. Description, picture. So picture is the little picture that shows up in the event. Now depending on the event type, this is going to change. For instance, big events, or well, use events, they usually use big icons. I could possibly grab an example here. Just so you know, the events are stored in GFX, add event pictures, and yeah, you can see they are rectangular shapes. This is a good example of a news event, right? Now let me give you an example of a regular event, or the country events. They usually use these, which are tilted. Again, you can make them not tilted. It's just, yeah, it's just the size and the resolution has to be the same. There might be a question: can we change the resolution? Can we change the layout? Can I make country events use the big pictures? In theory, yes. You can actually do some GUI coding. You can pretty much edit the way it is handled in vanilla. Although that's pretty much advanced code, so I say you shouldn't really touch those. At least not for now. Myself, I couldn't really get it to work properly. But if I do one day, I'm probably gonna make a tutorial about it and share that code with you guys. So we're going to continue. Now, with the basics done, an event will need a trigger. So what is a trigger? A trigger is basically a bunch of conditions. If these conditions are met, this event will pop in. Now, as you could see here, it says is triggered only equals yes. Now, this is the alternative to triggers. This means that this event is, well, started, triggered, right, by something else, by another event, by a focus, a decision perhaps. This is the way for you to trigger an event. So it's country event, hours, so in how many hours this event is going to trigger. You can also use days. So in 6 days, it will fire the event with the ID news.32. That's just an example. So for now, we're just going to delete this stuff here. I highly advise, whenever you're working with events, is that you add some comments, like I will show you now. I just add like a bunch here. The event title, for instance, and a bunch of these here. This is just for organizational purposes, just so you organize your code. That's why whenever you actually get back to your files, if you want to edit one of them, that's all going to be organized, all going to be neat, easy for you to find the files and so on. I mean, easy for you to find the events. Moving on. So after you have a trigger, and I'm going to now show you how a trigger would look. Just trigger, and inside of here you can add whatever triggers you want. You're going to be asking me, where can I find a complete list of all the triggers that exist in game, with, if possible, explanations and examples. As I've said before, the Hearts of Iron IV Wiki is an amazing, I say again, an amazing resource. It gets updated every now and then, new stuff are being added and so on, so this is honestly an amazing source for all sorts of information. You just have to go here to modding, and then you're just going to scroll down till, well, it's either the very bottom here, you're going to find documentation, and you can find all the things you want. For here, you're going to go and check the triggers, also known as conditions. This is a complete list of them. It even gives you a description. Scopes, we're going to get into those in a minute. Scopes is basically I don't really know how to explain scopes, so I might just check the wiki page myself. Oh yeah, scopes are select entities in order to check for conditions or apply commands. They're basically the target. So for instance, I'm going to give you an example about these conditions and the way you could use scopes. So for instance, I want to check if a certain nation has more than 50% of stability. So has stability, for instance, this means that if any country in the world has less stability than 60%, it's going to trigger this event. There's an issue. It's going to trigger this event for an unlimited amount of times, and this is not something you want to have, at least not in this scenario. So fire only once. Now if this is set to yes, it means that this event will only happen once. A good example of this would possibly be the event for the Anschluss. You don't want that one to trigger multiple times, you just need it once per game. So that's how you can do it. Okay, so trigger has stability this. I can also say tag Germany or GER. It means that you need to be Germany. So if Germany has less stability than 0.6, the event will trigger. Now if you want to find a list of all these tags, you can find them here in the common. Scroll down to country tags and country tags. Here you can find a whole list of all tags that exist. If I'm looking, for instance, for communist China, this is regular China, get out, and this is communist China, PRC. Let's get back here. So let's say I don't want this event to happen to Germany. I want the event to happen to the Soviet Union, so SOV, only if another country has less stability than 0.6. How can I do this? Well, this is where actually scopes come in hand. You can just add GER, which is scope for Germany, and you don't forget to close your brackets. So it means that if Germany has less stability than 0.6, this event will trigger. Now you could also use what we call operators. So for instance, let's get this one back, right? I want this event to trigger if Germany does not have this thing here. Well, there's a way of doing it, which is called operators, not. Don't forget to close your brackets here. So not this. If this condition is not accomplished, then, and if you're playing, of course, as the Soviet Union, then, of course, you get this event. The other operators that exist are AND, which means that all the triggers inside of this two limits or brackets or whatever are met. There's also OR, so only one of them has to be met if you have like multiple conditions or triggers, and that's all that exists. There's only not, or, and. Of course, you can use them inside of each other, so you can just say, like, for instance, not or, not and, not and or. You can mix them as much as you want. Now there might be another question. For now, we're gonna keep a simple trigger, so 193611, so or 5, so once the 5th day has came, it will trigger. Some people might be asking, right, what's this? Well, this is basically the buttons you get, and as we know, buttons need to have a name, as you could see. This again works exactly the same as the title here. It's a localization key that you need to add in the localization file. Then of course you have whatever effects you want this thing here to do. Now, just so you guys know, it is possible to add a trigger inside of the option, so something kind of like this. If you actually select something and you press tab, it actually pushes it to the right, just so you know. So if, for instance, I do something like this, what this actually means is that this option, this button, would only be visible, would only be there if this trigger is met. Now this is a very useful functionality. Some people don't know about it even existing, but I believe that now you do. So here you put whatever effects you want. Now people will be asking, what are effects? They're also known as commands. You can check them here under effects, as I said, commands, and here you can see all the commands you can do. Things like adding war support, things like destroying ships. Like, this is honestly really like the way they did stuff in the 1.5 update is just amazing. Like, these new effects, these new triggers, just an amazing job from Paradox. So you can see, for instance, here you can change the politics. So this is how you can make a certain country fascist or whatever. This is how you can set political power. Set is different from add. It's pretty much sets that number to 100. For instance, you can of course guarantee, give military access, remove from faction, add to faction, dismantle faction. Again, I highly advise you just open up this document and take a good read to it, just so you guys know what's possible and what's not yet possible in HOI IV Modding. Of course, I'll be posting a link to all these things here in the description down below. So for instance, we want our event to give us political power. So add political power equals 100. Maybe we want to do something else. Maybe we want to make the Soviet Union fascist. Now, that's usually done by set politics. So here we go. So as I've said before, I'm probably going to say it 100 times in the next videos, modding is all based on copying, pasting, editing, editing and saving. So here, for instance, is gonna make the Soviet Union democratic. You can check these ideology syntax again here in common and ideologies. You can check them here. So this is of course if you want elections to be allowed. Of course, a democracy should have elections, and we might want to add maybe 40% popularity to the Democratic Party. So that's how we do it. 40%, that's 0.4. And that's maybe going to be our test event here. So we are going to save it. Save as. So I'm going to save it in my mod. The mod we created in the last video. No, it's not here. It's in Paradox Interactive, HOI IV mod, and YouTube test mod. So we're going to put it in the events. Oh, before we save it, make sure the encoding is UTF-8 bomb. Most TXT files used by HOI IV will use that encoding, so make sure to save it in that specific encoding. So this is a directory to your mod, events, and make sure it's TXT, and we're going to save it. Awesome. So what we are also going to do is we're going to go to our mod, and I of course prepared this video beforehand, so I did make some localization. Again, this is very simple stuff. Let me just get the thing set up. Of course, just for the purposes of this video, we're going to set this here to desk or description. You can again set it to whatever you want. Just make sure that this is identical to what you have here in the localization file, and don't forget that this is all case sensitive. So we can just say democratic uprising and maybe Balliet. Yeah, why not? Just so you guys know, localization files are .yml. If you want to create a new one, you can either create one, or what I do usually is just copy one from vanilla and just delete its content. You don't delete its entire content, of course. You only are going to delete the keys, and you are going to leave this here. This is very important. So we are going to test our mod now. Wait, where's... Let me just reveal stuff here. And we are going to launch Hearts of Iron IV with the YouTube test mod we created in the last video. So, where is it? Test mod. Yeah, so I guess also for the purposes of this video, in the last video we made this here compatible or supporting 1.5.2, but we're not using it, so I will show you how to edit that. So whenever a new update comes up, you can just go to your .mod file and you can just edit this to whatever you want. You can set it to 0 or 1 if you want, but the other option is actually putting a star. So whatever version comes up here is not really going to mess up your code. It's set in UTF-8 bomb. Good. And we are going to relaunch Hearts of Iron IV again with that mod, and we are going to test the mod. I'm also going to show you a way to trigger your mod, trigger your events just for testing purposes. Crap. I might be running this in the wrong resolution. You see, my screen is actually a square, so I'll just relaunch Hearts of Iron IV in the right resolution. Usually when you get this, just skip, because if you don't skip it, it's just going to the correct word is fuck up your mods. So let's check the Discord in the meanwhile. Yeah, that's actually a good question. There actually are custom tags for East and West Germany. There already exist in vanilla. But of course, I'm going to make a tutorial on how to make your own countries from A to Z, with maybe even custom portraits, custom leaders, how to make your generals, how to set the party popularity, which party is going to be ruling that country, adding the flags, which resolution to use for flags, and all of that stuff. I'm going to make a tutorial at least on that one very soon. It's I would possibly say it's easier than adding events. It's much easier. It's just simple editing. It's not even coding, it's just editing. So I really hope you guys are enjoying this series. If you have any suggestions, maybe things I'm doing in the wrong way, things I'm doing in a bad way, just let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll make sure to take your ideas in consideration. Speaking of which, this channel, my YouTube channel at least, is not only going to contain modding tutorials. I'm going to start making some gameplays of Hearts of Iron IV, Metaphor, Soul Squad 2, perhaps some Kerbal Space Program at some point, and a bunch of other mods. Not mods, games. Yeah, a bunch of other games. But it's mostly going to be strategy, maybe some tactical shooters, mainly Project Reality. That sort of stuff. Yeah, so the game should be loaded now. I really love this new loading screen, by the way. So, you're gonna go single player. if you guys remember the code, the event triggers for the Soviet Union. So we're gonna place them, and the trigger only the event only triggers after the 5th of January. So if you unpause the game and we wait until the 5th, then it is going to happen. Hopefully. That actually reminds me, there's something quite important, an important note that I'm going to give you in a second. I just need to load the game, and I'm going to show you a small issue with Hearts of Iron 4 when it comes to triggering events in a specific date. So right now, if I'm just going to unpause, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and the trigger should the event should trigger anytime now. Now you see it didn't trigger at the 5th, and that's because Hearts of Iron 4 checks for events every 20 days. I'm not even sure if the event is going to happen. Maybe it's gonna trigger anytime now. Who knows? Wait, what did we set in the code? Well, this looks correct. Oh, wait a minute. The event didn't trigger. We're going to try to trigger the event in a different way. So you go to event, and then you are going to type the ID. So this is how you can trigger an event without waiting for the trigger to be met. Aha, so the event is happening. And we didn't have any descriptions, but about yet. Political power plus 100. Politics will change, as you could notice, so we are going to become a democratic nation. And there we go. So now Russia is led by Kerensky, although I don't think that's how he looked back then. I could be wrong though, but you could see that the event triggered using the console only. Now you might be wondering, why didn't the event happen? We were way past the 5th of January. Well, here's why. As I have said, vanilla Hearts of Iron 4 checks for events every 20 days. Now you might be wondering, but General, can we change it? Well, yes, you can. That requires that you tweak the defines. So right now, I'm not going to get into the defines, but I'm just going to show you here. Where is it? That's the timeout. Just going to look up for an event, and maybe we can find it. Yes, event process offset. Events are checked every X day per country or state. 1 is ideal but CPU heavy. So you can set it to 1, so it checks it for every day, but it's going to cause a performance drop. So today we learned a lot of stuff. We learned about how to code events. We learned on how triggers or conditions work. We also learned on how commands or effects work. If you do have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below, or in my Discord server, which you will be able to see the link to it in the description down below. You're of course welcome to join that server. We'll be hosting events, either Hearts of Iron 4 events or Men of War events, or whatever people actually want to play. We'll probably be able to accommodate. That was the Algerian General, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers!